Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd take, I guess take seats. The seats are all taken, but if you can find a comfortable place to stand. Welcome. This is the public section of the Winchester Select Board meeting of Monday, June 25th. I'm Lance Grensback. I serve as the chair of the committee. With me tonight, the other board members are on my right, David Arico, Mariano Golubov, on my left, Jacqueline Welsh, and Mike Betancourt, our town manager, Richard Howard. So please sit. We have the next two scheduled meetings of the board. One will be on Monday, July 9th. That will be a regular meeting. And then on Tuesday, July 10th, we will have a joint session, a working session with the planning board, talk about some of the downtown projects. We have not yet scheduled other meetings in July. I hope there's some people around in Winchester so that we can actually hold a meeting during July. So very briefly, we have a couple business items, including a very short grant of location hearing at 7:35. So we'll cover a few items, break for that hearing, come back, cover a few more business items, and then start the, good. Go ahead, yes, why don't you take a few minutes and let your people volunteer where they'd like to sit. You're welcome to sit along the sides if you can. One thing.
I'm moving this, I just don't want to knock it over.
Drag a chair around and sit down.
Make an announcement, have everybody come in, just so there's plenty of chairs.
I think they're filtering in. Steve Powers. Psst. There's more. There's seats down here. Okay. As part of our energy management program, we don't cool this room much in the summer, so you picked the right day. And those of you who are sitting by the windows on either side will be very appreciative after a while. Yes, it's a good idea. Open a few more than you would, please. I will skip with the board's permission to item F, which is a hearing. It will be a very brief one, I expect. So with the board's permission, we will open the hearing. This is for NStar Electric Company, doing business as Eversource, is a grant of location to install some conduits. Beth Rudolph, our town engineer, and Aviv. Welcome. If you would introduce yourselves. And
Beth Rudolph, town engineer.
Jackie Duffy, Eversource Energy.
okay.
Eversource has a grant location petition to install approximately 21 feet of conduit in the public right-of-way on Foxcroft Road. The work is necessary to provide underground electrical service to the home at 36 Foxcroft Road. Engineering and DPW have reviewed it, and we have no concerns.
Okay. Does the board have any questions about this one? No? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this grant of location for 21 feet of conduit? Hearing none, I will close the public portion of the hearing and ask the board if we're ready to vote. So if I see a nod, Mr. Mariano, Mr. Golovoff, would you?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we vote to approve the grant of location for NStar Electric Company doing business as Eversource Energy, Foxcroft Road, South Etherleaf from pole 54/9, approximately 164 feet east of Cambridge Street, a distance of about 21 feet.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded. Okay, further discussion on the part of the board? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, I'll return to the comments. Chair has two comments. One is this weekend, the new Skillings baseball field was used for the first time. There was an alumni baseball game. I'm told the score ended 4-4 conveniently, and that everybody was famous and fared quite well. But the field looks quite excellent, and I would like to thank all of you, and particularly the DPW, who've been working very hard to get that field in shape. There's a large section beyond the turf field that's now been planted, some with sod and some with regular grass. It'll need to grow for a season or so, but the whole field should be open rather shortly for use by the high school and other teams in town. So David pitched elegantly for the day and lived to tell about it. The other point, Patty Amon, who has been our administrative secretary and the most organized person we've ever dealt with, will be retiring. She's served some 30 years here in Winchester. I was going to embarrass her by asking for a standing ovation, if you can do that. Thank you. All right, thank you. Those of you who have not dealt with Patty on a regular basis cannot appreciate how organized and efficient and effective. If the Board of Selectmen, now Select Board, has ever looked half decent in the public eye, it's because of Patty's work and sort of maintenance of our agendas and keeping us. She's also our corporate memory of everything we've done in the past 30 years, I was going to say longer, things like that. Okay, do we have other board members who'd like to make comments?
I would just
Jackie?
like to point out that it's wonderful to see so many people here. It'd be great if you guys came to all of our meetings. It's fantastic to have such a level of public engagement and participation, and I have no doubt that our board all agrees that this only makes Winchester better. So thank you so much for taking the time on this beautiful evening to come and participate. Thank you.
Other members? Mike, anything? David?
Mr. Chairman, I guess it's a point of information on the format of the agenda. At the bottom, there's some language that hasn't been there before. I was just wondering who put it there, what's the purpose, and, again, it's never been there before, so I don't know who put it there and why it's there.
I will turn to town council for more detail, but we were advised that that is a language that's recommended under the open meeting law to advise people that because the agendas are set 48 hours ahead of meetings, there will sometimes be issues of broad concern to the community. And the open meeting law does provide an opportunity for the chair to add items that are of critical interest after the 48 hours, as long as they're posted, and you'll have an updated version. The language is, I believe, carried by many towns and cities when we checked, and so we decided to make that clear on our agendas as well. So this is a recommendation of town council.
Thank you.
Okay, other comments?
Yeah,
Mariano?
I'd like to point out that tomorrow at the Morocco School, we're going to have the second community forum for the housing production plan at 7 p.m. So if you can make it, come give your feedback on the housing production plan that we're working on. And if you can't make it tomorrow night at 7 p.m., we are also going to be at the auditorium here on Friday from 9 to 11 a.m. as well, so that you can see the material for the housing production plan.
Okay. Last call for comments, if not, okay. Move on, town manager's report, Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Lance. A couple of very quick items in the report. The appointment of Mary Curran, who previously had transferred from the clerk's office to the position at the DPW within the cemetery unit. So we're just making her transfer effective with an appointment this evening. And again, currently employed, we're just advising the board of the change in her status and location. The other item for your consideration is an appointment to the Conservation Commission. We've attached the resume of Kerry Layton, who's a resident, also a business owner within the town center area, and we're glad to add her to the Conservation Commission staff and rules there.
Okay. So that's your appointment as well.
Those are manager's appointments, right?
Okay. Any further questions, Mr. Howard?
And we will be bringing forward some names for the Historic Commission. That hasn't, posting has not closed yet, but by the time of your next board meeting, that'll probably have happened on a calendar basis, and we'll bring forward some appointments there.
Point of information question. I'm just curious where the status of the last ZBA appointment or the most recent.
Yeah, I think that is closing as well, and we, if it's not next meeting.
July 6th?
June 26th.
June 26th,
Yeah,
okay,
this week.
tomorrow.
This
Okay.
week, yeah. So I think we would be in a position to be making a record. That's a board appointment, so.
Right, okay.
However, the board decides to proceed either with a new round of interviews. If you remember, you've had a couple of recent appointments and you've went through quite a bit of interviews, but however, the board reacts to the request of resumes that have come in to seek appointment to that board, the board would take that up.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have other items?
I don't.
Okay. Okay. Matters from the audience. Is there anyone who would like to bring a matter to our attention that we would deal with in a future meeting? Is a matter that's not already on the agenda tonight? Is it having anything to do with the town manager selection committee, in case it's already on the agenda then? It's already on the agenda, I think, for this, for tonight. Okay. Okay, hearing none, we have no comptroller, no other licenses, so we'll move to section G. We take up the town manager selection discussion. Let me start with a bit of an explanation of where we are and where we're going. We have three items to discuss tonight. One is the discussion of an open meeting law complaint. Second is further consideration of the town manager selection process. And third is to discuss and potentially vote on an offer. And there's a bit of background, so you'll all understand where we are. At the select board meeting on Friday the 11th, members of our board noted that the agenda for the 11th listed a discussion of the interview process under the docket item town manager selection, but it did not explicitly list a discussion of extending an offer to a preferred candidate.
I'm so sorry, point of information, I believe you said June 11th, and I believe you intended to say June 15th, is that correct?
You're correct. Thank you.
you.
That's what happens when you type too late at night with a cheap typist. So following that meeting, and that was pretty much on the following Monday, I asked the town council to review our agenda posting and our votes. They advised that the posting and the votes were in order, but to ensure that we adhered to both the letter and the spirit of the open meeting law, we should repost both topics for discussion tonight, and we have done so, so those are on the agenda tonight. We will discuss, as we get through here, both the interview process and the offer under business item G2. On this past Friday, we received a formal open meeting law complaint on the issue, which I will read out to you in a moment. We received the complaint too late to include it in the posted agenda, which was published on Wednesday night and Thursday to comply with a standard 48-hour notification. However, as we discussed a few moments ago to Mr. Rico's question, the open meeting law allows the chair to update the agenda, including this type of late arriving complaint, as something important to the town, but not reasonably anticipated. And so we have, as I said before, added that to the agenda. So I will just briefly read a summary. I'm sure Mrs. Schleicher will fill in the details. She said she is filing this. She's saying, I'm filing this complaint in response to actions taken on June 15th by the Winchester Select Board members Lance Grensbach, Mariano Goluboff, and Michael Betancourt, who she says intentionally chose to violate the open meeting law by ignoring language of the published agenda and forcing a vote to be taken to appoint a new Winchester town manager without providing adequate warning to the public vote. The published agenda for the meeting did not contain any language that a vote would be taken to appoint a new town meeting manager on this date. The published agenda did identify there would be a discussion and selection of additional candidates for interview for the position, a vote which was approved by the Select Board at their June 11th meeting. According to Mrs. Schleicher, the intentional actions by the 3 members of the Select Board ignore language of the published June 15th meeting agenda, denied public the right to participate by failure to provide them with adequate warning of their vote to be taken to appoint a new Winchester town manager, and some bit more details on the backgrounds to that. We will cover both of the issues under items G2 now, so we will take up and address and effectively address this complaint. So we'll do that. We will, of course, submit a formal response in writing to the Attorney General's office under the prescribed process for responding to open meeting law complaints, and that will take place as soon as we finish this meeting. As this is a procedural item, I think it's been filed, and I'm sure people will discuss the substance of it as we get into the other items. I don't think we need to be discussing this item per se, but move on to the next 2 items that we have on the agenda. So item 1 now, B, I'm looking at the old one. So item G1B calls for further consideration of the town manager selection process. Provide you with, again, some background on the process here. I will then open the item for discussion by the board members, and following that, I will then open the floor to the public. I assume that 15 or 20 minutes or so discussion will be sufficient for people to register their comments to us. I will ask, because there are a fair number of people, that you keep your comments short, pithy, and to the point, and appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, may I please ask a point of information question on a point of order as far as procedure? So I may have misunderstood, and I apologize, but I thought that you were indicating that that when you had a discussion with town council subsequent to the June 15th select board meeting, that town council indicated that I'm paraphrasing here, but in order to comply roughly with the spirit of and the letter of the open meeting law, that the items from June 15th were going back on the agenda. Do I have that correct? And if town council wants to respond to that, that's fine. Because my question I'll just ask is, and it's just a point of order question, is item 1B supposed to be identical to what was on the agenda on June 15th? I'm just asking, because if it isn't, I'm not saying one way or the other, I just wanted to know so that we don't suggest that this is the same topic, because it doesn't seem verbatim to be the same topic.
I'll leave it to town council, but it's intended to be a further discussion of the interview process.
Right, and then do you happen to have the copy of the agenda for June 15th? Because otherwise I'll find it.
I don't have
I
that
can get
handy.
you one.
Okay, because,
Could
okay,
you
I
make a
think that,
copy of the agenda for June 11th as well, please?
Sure.
but in any event, I believe the topic's different, and maybe it's fine. I just wanted to, I didn't want there to be a suggestion that it was the same. but, because it isn't. But if that's not the
I think the-
intention, that it be the identical topic, that's fine, we can move on.
I think the intent was it would be a discussion of as noted on the 11th, discussion of the interview process and the
Well, we're talking about the
potential-
15th, not the 11th.
I'm sorry, the 15th. It will be a discussion of that item carried forward as the board wishes to act on it. So
Okay, but I
it
mean,
was,
that topic on
we
the 15th.
broadened, on the council's advice, we broadened the title a little bit to cover the entire selection process and not just the specific issues that were on the
On the 15th.
15th.
Okay.
But certainly those would be,
Okay, thank you. So just for the record, that topic was town manager selection, discussion and selection of additional candidates for interview. I just wanted the record to be clear, so,
and
thank you. So in other words, and then
those
we can move
topics
on,
are,
but
those
so-
topics are germane for tonight and you can speak to them.
Okay, even though they're not written on here.
I think I just repeated several times that they are germane and can open for discussion
Well,
tonight,
just
is
for
my
the record,
understanding.
this is selection of additional candidates for interview,
That's-
so,
That's noted.
okay. And Art, is that,
In my view, tonight's agenda item was intended to encompass everything that was.
on the June 15th agenda?
Yes, it's
Okay,
intended
and
to-
the only reason why I'm asking is because it's not identical. If it had been identical, I promise you I would not have asked the question or wasted the board's time. But because there was a representation that it was supposed to be covering the same agenda, and yet it isn't identical language, that's why I asked.
And as the chair said, it was broadened to make sure that any nuance.
Well, it might have been
was
broadened, but
included.
it didn't actually include this language too, so that's why a
Okay.
point of information. So thank you so much, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, a point of information. I guess maybe I need more clarification why we're not discussing the open meeting law complaint received June 22nd regarding June 15th, 2018 Select Board meeting. Will the merits and the points made in that complaint be up for discussion in B?
I presume they would be open for discussion in B and C, yes.
Okay.
Okay. So to restart briefly, we're going to provide you with some background on the selection process, and I will open the item, which is listed under B, 1B there, for discussion by the board members, and again, following that, I will open the floor for public comments if you'd like to do so. So I would just, to make sure we're all starting off on the same footing on this, I would refer you back to what the town charter says. The town charter assigns to the select board responsibility for hiring the town manager. It says that the Board of Selectmen, now Select Board, shall appoint a town manager for an indefinite term and fix his compensation within the amount annually appropriated for that purpose, so it's subject to town meeting in the end. The office of the town manager shall not be subject to a consolidated personnel bylaw. Town manager shall be appointed solely on the basis of his executive and administrative qualifications, and he shall be a professionally qualified person of proven ability, especially fitted by education, training, and previous experience in municipal administration to perform the duties of the office. He shall not have served in an elective office in the town government, in Winchester town government, for at least 12 months prior to his appointment, and he shall devote full time to the office and shall not hold any other public office, elective or appointive, nor engage in any other business or occupation during his term, unless such action is approved in advance in writing by the Board of Selectmen. And concludes by saying the town may from time to time, by bylaw, establish such additional qualifications as seem necessary and appropriate. So in moving forward to select a new town manager, we followed the same process we followed 7 years ago when we sought an advisory committee to find a new town manager. Our first step was to create the advisory committee, now you know as the Town Manager Search Advisory Committee. Under the open meeting law, an advisory committee can accept applications, review them, conduct interviews, screening interviews, that is, without making the names of the applicants public. And the reason for this being allowed under state law, is to encourage a wide range of qualified applicants, as wide a range to apply as possible. Once the advisory committee submits their short list of applicants to us, once they've completed their screening, then all further interviews must be done in a public session, which we have done, and many of you attended those. So we created the committee. We then appointed 7 members. The members were chosen to give us very broad representation of citizens involved in town government, town businesses, civic and cultural organizations, and the concerns of our neighborhoods. The Select Board reviewed and unanimously approved the membership on that committee. So we reviewed each person and approved them. Okay. We then charged the advisory committee to do a bunch of things. One was to review the needs and opportunities facing Winchester. They interviewed, reported to us, 45 people, including members of elected and appointed boards, staff, town meeting members, business leaders, civics groups, sports, cultural, a whole range of meetings. They also heard from 92 residents through an online survey that they posted. We asked them to use this information to determine the specific qualifications and experience that would best address our needs and opportunities, and the committee did so. They reported to us, and we reviewed and unanimously endorsed several pages detailing the criteria that they recommended that they were going to use to screen the candidates. We asked them to screen candidates. They accepted resumes from, I think, about 40 people, and they interviewed the more qualified applications. And finally, we asked them to recommend a short list of candidates for our review. They recommended 3. One, when asked did they want to go forward with the process, declined. So at our meeting of June 11th, we then moved on to schedule interviews for those 2 people. And at our meeting on June 11th, we debated whether to interview additional candidates from their list. We agreed that we would interview the 2 recommended candidates and that we would come back on June 15th, if I've got the date right this time, to discuss picking a process for picking and interviewing additional candidates, perhaps another 2. We then went ahead and we interviewed the 2 candidates, one on June 11th, one on June 13th, and I believe many of you attended both the open house and or the interview in the evening. We did that. We concluded the interviews on Wednesday. Late Thursday night, we were informed that both candidates were considering withdrawing. Mr. Howard contacted the one candidate and confirmed that he'd been offered a higher salary and had accepted it from his existing town. And the other candidate we were unable to contact, but told us early in the morning that for personal reasons they were withdrawing. Okay, so with this new information on Friday morning, we chose to close the interview phase and to offer the position of town manager to Lisa Wong. So that brings us, at least on the second point, to the open meeting law violation that we will cure tonight by discussing that again. So with that background, I will open the table to the board members to discuss the selection process. I think in this case, we'd like to focus particularly on the decisions that were made about the interview sequences, and we'll come back under the next point to discuss the actual offer. So I will.
Point of information,
Yes.
point of procedure, and if Attorney Krieger needs to clarify, that would be great too. So just so we're clear, so are we, I understood everything that you just said. Thank you so much for that level of detail. I know it was helpful to the board as well as hopefully those listening on WinCam and also in the audience. So thank you so much for doing that. But my question is simply, are we kind of ratcheting back to June 15th essentially for all the reasons that you just stated? In other words, on the assumption that we have 2 withdrawn candidates, or are we somehow not at June 15th, we're sort of after June 15th?
I believe my understanding of the intent of the article is to take it back to before June 15th and discuss the 2 questions. Did we want to add additional candidates for interview? And if...
You mean the June 11th vote?
Yes. So
Okay.
Well, we can do that. I mean, this is the board's choice, okay? So we posted both items, so the continuing discussion of the interview process, the question is, do we want to stay with the decision we made on June 15th to close the interviews? Or do we want to reopen that and conduct additional
So
interviews?
I think you were very clear, and I totally understood that, but in order to interpret that question, I'm just kind of curious, as a point of information, if we're voting to close or make a decision, technically then would there be the status quo that existed the morning of June 15th, which is that we had no candidates. There were 2 withdrawn candidates.
That's a second question, so I guess...
Well, no, that's the context in which we would,
I understand, but the question before us is, do you want to discuss the interview process? And I don't know that whether...
okay, that's a beautiful question, and we can all understand that question, but I mean, as of what, today, or as of June 15th? As of the facts today?
We're effectively reopening that discussion, so it's as of today, I think, is the proper answer. Would you want to make,
Is that correct, Attorney Krieger? If we're putting this on the agenda again because of, whatever verb you want to use, an issue or concern or whatever you want to call it about open meeting law, then are we assuming that we're sort of the status of candidates as it was June 15th before we began that meeting, or as it is now, which would be after the June 15th votes? I'm just kind of curious. I'm not debating. I just want to know procedurally where we are so no one in this room is confused.
My answer is that you are going back to before the June 15th vote and discussing the process in a way that is intended to cure any open meeting law problem that anybody may be alleging about that vote, and discuss the process in general. You can do the same, different, or something contrary to what you did on June 15th. It's intended to undo whatever was done that day.
Okay, I
Now,
understand.
your discussion of candidates, to be realistic, should reflect what you now know about their interest or availability. There's no point in you're settling on a course for someone who has re-upped in his existing town, for example. But the discussion is wide open, and I wouldn't rule anything out.
Well, of course, as of June 15th, we had 2 withdrawn candidates, so that was a different situation. There was different facts than what you're
I
suggesting.
understand the fine points here, but I guess the question tonight is, does the board wish to discuss the interview process, either continuing to a discussion of making an offer, or discussing adding additional interviewees?
Okay, I just reserve my point of order question that we just had a discussion on, so we can move forward.
So noted.
Thank you.
Mr. Rico.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would start off by saying that, if voicing your displeasure with the process as part of the discussion, I'm all in. My disappointment goes to some of the motions and the votes that have occurred. And the way I look at this, again, on June 8th, there was a motion and a vote to add 2 more candidates to the process. And
June 11th.
June 11th. And somehow, some way on June 15th, when we met, that was disregarded, and there was a motion and a vote to delay or postpone the selection committee, and to engage Ms. Wong, to ask her to come back, and to start negotiations for a contract. I don't see how that is possible if both of them backed out the night before. It makes no sense to me. From the very beginning, I have said that this is not about the candidates. This is about the process and the flaws that this process has had since June 8th, when we got 2 resumes from Mr. Howley. There was, in my mind, looking at the minutes from February 5th, there was language that talked about getting 3 to 4 candidates. And on the 8th, when we got 2 resumes, I know myself and Select Board Member Welch were extremely upset that we only got 2. For the town manager job for Winchester, Mass., I think it's probably one of the most prestigious jobs that you could get in the Commonwealth. It's a $200,000 job. We deserve to get more than 2 resumes. I think it's semantics to say that the Select Board had more resumes. We make the decision. The selection committee is advisory to us. We should have got at least 3 or 4 resumes, and if we got 3 or 4 resumes, nobody would be here right now. That's what it's all about. It's the process went awry. We never got any communication from Mr. Howley that said, hey, we're having a problem with getting qualified candidates. There needed to be that discussion. It never happened. There was 40 resumes that were received, and only 2 were submitted to us. That's just completely unacceptable. There were, as I was told, out of the 7 that were interviewed, the 2 that came back were Lisa Wong and Val Lemios. 2 backed out, and then there were 3 other ones. And I'm told that there was an alternate, and I understand tonight there was a meeting with the selection committee where it appears that the chairman is saying that there was an error made that there was some dialogue via email that should have been discussed in their meeting. So that seems to be a retroactive correction that I'm not happy about. And again, it just shows the amount and the degree of flaws during this process. This has nothing to do with the candidates. It's all about the process. And I have to tell you, when we met on the 15th, besides the flaw, I was incredibly disappointed in the conversation. I think I'll speak for myself, but I felt completely blindsided by the conversation. And instead of talking about bringing on 2 more people, somehow, some way, this conversation evolved, totally disregarded that June 11th discussion and vote to, hey, let's go call Lisa, invite her back, and offer her the job. There's no mention about, it is incredibly disappointing to me. I've been a selectman for 2.5 years now, most disappointing moment in my 2.5 years, and I've become so disappointed in that. I have retained counsel and am filing my own complaint with the Attorney General. My attorney is Chris Petrini. He's behind me, and I would like for him to elaborate a little bit on my concerns with the process. So I don't know if you want to do that now or at another point during this conversation.
If the board has no objection, we'll invite counsel.
No
Welcome.
Should I sit here, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, that's the only way you'll be heard by other people watching on the WinCam.
Well, good evening, board members and members of the audience. I was retained by Mr. Errico. I am Christopher Petrini from Petrini and Associates in Framingham, and practiced municipal law for 20 years, and have a cordial relationship with Art Krieger as well. And the concerns that Mr. Rico has outlined, in my view, do have validity. Obviously, the decision on the appointment of a town administrator, a town manager, is probably one of the most important things a selectman can do. I'm a former selectman in Framingham, if not the most important job that you do. And obviously, the focus on the open meeting law is to make such decisions as transparently as possible and to maintain the public trust in our governmental institutions. And as Mr. Rico has outlined, recent actions has called that public trust into question. Obviously, there was a decision made first on February 5th to request a reasonable number of resumes to come back as finalists. I think it was 3 to 4. There was mentioned by the town manager at that February 5th meeting. I saw a tape that there would be 3 to 4 resumes that would be brought back. And obviously, 2 resumes were brought back. Originally, there was going to be 3, and then only 2. I guess there was one that had withdrawn. And then on June 11th, the board properly decided to request a couple more resumes. And the purpose of having resumes in this process is so that this board can conduct a meaningful comparative deliberation. It may be that the selected candidate may be the one that the majority or all the board members choose.
Can I ask a point of information?
Yes.
Council just mentioned that on June 11th, the board properly decided to add 2 more candidates. Do you have a copy of the June 11th agenda?
I've looked at it previously.
I have one here.
I
Can you
believe
find where the town manager selection process was discussed there?
I believe it was under scheduling, according to the chair at the time. It was about scheduling for the week of the interviews.
If I may, I actually, when the motion was made, I specifically mentioned to the chair that the motion was out of order.
Right, well, as the chair had alluded.
I'm sorry, do you find on the agenda that the town manager selection process was on June 11th? When the process was changed from the original process on June 11th, when a motion was made, would a reasonable person reading that agenda think that the town manager process would be discussed on June 11th?
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Let's counsel
I
finish.
didn't realize I was going to be have an inquisition here, but I can certainly check and look at this when I have a little chance. I'm not sure where it is exactly. I have seen it
Yeah, it's
before.
Let's move on. Counsel, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, in any event, the board, in my view, properly made a decision to seek a couple more resumes for finalists so that you could have a comparative deliberation, and that would allow both the public and the board to have an opportunity to compare amongst candidates. It's not just having independent interviews and then selecting in one name. And then on June 15th, apparently, two of the candidates withdrew themselves, as the chair had noticed earlier, one the evening before, and I guess Ms. Wong either that night, June 14th, or the morning of the 15th. And as pointed out previously, the agenda for June 15th makes no reference. It talks about discussion or continuation of the town manager search process or adding of additional candidates. I have the exact
This is
language.
it, if you want it.
Hold on one second. Yes, so the June 15th agenda is town manager selection, discussion, and selection of additional candidates for interview. And rather than take such action, the board went ahead and terminated the interview process, or ended the search process, and voted to enter into negotiations with one candidate. And it's not simply that the chair is right. You can update your agenda based on new information received. My understanding is this agenda was never updated. I don't know if there was sufficient time or not. That's a separate question. But for purposes of public disclosure, obviously the agenda should be updated, and we should adhere to our agendas. And obviously, if there are any discussions outside of the meeting, that would be improper as well, with a quorum of the board. And I was at the Town Manager Search Advisory Committee meeting this evening, and you probably have a copy of it, but the chair did write a note to the board on June 22nd indicating that there was an acknowledgement by that board that they had gone ahead and deliberated by email to not bring one of the alternative candidates forward. So that's essentially an acknowledgement by your search committee that there was a violation of the open meeting law as well. So and this will run its process, and I understand these are challenges, but I believe that what the two other selectmen, Mr. Rico and Ms. Welch, are requesting is that there be 4 candidates total brought forward, 3 to 4, and that a collaborative deliberation occur and then a choice be made. You may end up in the same place, but then you'd have honor to the process, and some of these open meeting law complaints could be resolved. So otherwise, obviously, people will have to make decisions about where to go forward in that process, but the aspects of the law haven't been complied with here, and I respectfully ask the board to consider that. So,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
We have other comments from other board members?
I just wanted to point out that, just a couple things very quickly, and thank you, council, on behalf of Selectman Orico, but that simply having more candidates doesn't change anything about anybody's view of the current candidates. So myself and everyone on this board have consistently noted how appreciative we are of all the hours, voluntary hours of the search committee. And so there's nothing that anybody's saying that's negative about the search committee, and nothing anybody's saying that's negative about these candidates. It may in fact end up that we have the same, what the vote was on June 15th may end up being the final vote. It's just that I've never been involved in an organization that only looked at 2 candidates, and certainly for an organization where the job is a $200,000 a year salary position. It's, I believe, the most highest paying job in our town. It's obviously an important position. We're stewards of the town. We're stewards of the legacy of this town and of the taxpayer. Now, the candidates who withdrew, and then I'm not even sure precisely what the status is, but they may in fact be the best candidates. But I've only been on this board for 3 months. I was previously chair of the planning board. We interviewed candidates for the town planner. We certainly interviewed more than what this board would have interviewed. So my own experience in town government as well as private law practice is nothing at all like this. And so I just think that it does service to whoever ultimately is the town manager. It may end up being Ms. Wong. I don't know, but I just know that it seems like we have a job to do, and that's all my view is to just procedurally make sure that we're looking at a few more candidates so that then, as a board, we come together and make the best decision as a board, whatever the majority is, or maybe it would be unanimous. We're simply doing our job. That's all this is about. So if our job takes 10 extra days, our job takes 10 extra days, and we may end up in the same spot, but we've done our job. This is about doing our job, in my view. And I would also just note that, I'm very appreciative of the search committee, but this is not ultimately, as with all due respect to the chair, as you just read, this is not the search committee's decision. If it's the search committee's decision, then we should just collectively make that motion and allow them to choose. And unless we're going to do that, then it's this board's decision. So I am looking forward to working with the new town manager. I know whoever this board selects is going to do a fantastic job. I have no doubt about that, and I am so eager to work with that new person, whoever it is. I sincerely can't wait to work with that new person, although of course we'll miss Mr. Howard. But I simply wanted to take a little bit more time to have a couple more resumes so that we can compare the candidates and make the best decision for Winchester, which seems to be our job. That's all this is about. Thank you.
Mr. Rico?
Just to follow up there, Mr. Chairman, again, I don't know how strongly I could say this, but if there was one more candidate, you know, and I know on the 11th we said go to 4, we would not be here. I can personally say that, you know, Lisa Wong, it sounds like she's got some three strong advocates. And, you know, right now we've got a board that's got some, you know, it's a divisive situation, and it's splitting the town a little bit as well. It's a very sad situation, and it didn't need to be that way. Will never be able to understand why it was so unreasonable to add one more candidate, especially since there was an alternate that the peers was discussed about. That's all that had to happen, was just throw in another 1 or 2 candidates, and none of this would happen. I will never be able to figure out why that didn't happen. It's so reasonable. If you talk to other people that have been selectmen or, school committees for a new superintendent, you don't get two resumes. It's so unreasonable. And now, again, so what I see playing out is there's going to be, there was a potential open meeting violation, and maybe with the selection committee, there was a violation. So we're just going to do, everybody's going to be nicey, do a revote, and then move on. So it's so unfortunate. It never had to be this way. All we needed to do was get another 1 or 2 candidates, and I know, I'll speak for myself, we would never be in this predicament.
Comments?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to respond a little bit to Mr. Arrico through you. This process was made divisive only through Mr. Arrico's efforts. We never said that we would be quantifying candidates. We never said that the search committee was obligated to give us 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We were told that our job at that point was to bring a group of community members together for a search committee and to identify the most qualified members from a pool of applicants. That is what they did. From my perspective, the way that the search advisory committee conducted that process was the gold standard of how these processes are done throughout the Commonwealth. And I want to patently disagree with both Ms. Welch and Mr. Arrico. It is very common that there are one candidate, Mr. Howard, was the lone candidate left at the end of this process. Our superintendent, same process he mentioned on the school side. There were 3 candidates, and then 1 dropped out towards the end of the process, and there were 2. Exactly the same here. Other communities, Linfield, the same way. Belmont, I think, this is more the rule than it is the exception that candidates will drop out towards the end. And the job of the search committee is not to say we need X amount of candidates. We never told them that. It's that we said bring us the most qualified candidates, and that's what they did. We had 2 excellent candidates. I think the search committee did their job, and it went off the rails the day the search committee turned it over to this board. And what happened was Mr. Arrico said that he was going to boycott the process entirely if he did not have more candidates. And it didn't occur to me at the time, but a couple of weeks before, Mr. Arrico had made a motion to this board to automatically give interviews to Winchester residents and to adjust the process midway. It appears to me there'd be no other reason than Mr. Arrico was aware of somebody in that pool of applicants that he wanted to move forward. So I'm concerned that the whole concept of this search committee being removed from the political process is now intended through Mr. Arrico, through his counsel, through Ms. Welch, is to really be taken over by a couple people that have particular candidates in
Point
mind.
of order,
Oh,
point of
I don't-
order.
I
I will
don't
not
think-
be insulted by Mr.
Okay,
Bencourt. I think that's completely irresponsible.
Okay, so-
And it's ad hominem, and it's completely
I-
not in, of the decorum that this board should be, hold itself to.
Mrs. Welch,
And
I agree.
think that that's completely out of order.
Mrs. Welch, I agree. Mrs. Welch, I agree with you. We do not know what prompted you or Mr. Rico to make your decisions the way you did, and that's fine.
Well, I already stated mine, that it was about procedure, and
That's
so for
good.
Mr. Betancourt to have
Accept-
sat there and listened
noted,
to that and
accepted,
suggest
accepted.
something else is completely not something that as an elected member of this board, that I should have to sit here and listen to. It's completely, it's just beneath the level of this board for someone to insult someone else on the board, and I ask the chair to admonish everyone on the board not to engage in ad hominem attacks.
I so noted, and we do. Let
Thank
me,
you.
let me explain briefly the reference to the search committees.
Can I
Let
have some comment
let me,
regarding,
let me finish this note, a little clarification, then we'll go on. There's been a couple of references to the search committee. We did not, as I mentioned earlier, ask them for a specific number. We expected to get 3 or 4. They did in fact recommend, they did shortlist 3, and they did at the time suggest that they might have an alternate, 4th person do that. When they came to present to us, by the time they'd come to us the next day, it was things, one person had dropped out, so they had 2 candidates that were verified that they would come. And the question that was asked then of the committee members, advisory committee members, was should they bring forward that 4th person, I'll get that straight, who was the alternate. At the time, the committee was not available to meet. The chairman polled his committee by email, which is a violation of the open meeting law. They said at the time by the email polling that they did not want to bring that, the 4th alternate candidate forward. We noted, we talked about that process with town council, and we asked the town committee the search committee to address that. They met in formal posted session this evening. The question we asked them was, in fact, do you want to bring forward that 4th or alternate candidate? And their answer was no. They felt that the gap between the first 3 and the next set was sufficient. They didn't think that person, even though they had sort of given thought to it as being an alternative, was not of the caliber they wanted to bring forward. So we've had that issue addressed in a formal cure by the search committee. So that's what the reference is. So the search committee basically was asked to bring forward candidates. They had 3 selected. 1 dropped out. They brought 2. And they formally voted that they did not think the other one or the others on the list were sufficiently fit, particularly good fit for this job at this time. So that's where we stand on that. Sherry, you wanted to comment?
yeah, what I want to comment is that the job of this board is to hire the most qualified possible town managers, not to have a quota on the number of candidates to interview personally. The town itself took 40 applications, interviewed 7, and we interviewed the 2 most qualified. It's the job of this board is not to give courtesy interviews. The job of this board is to hire the most qualified candidate. In adding more candidates, that question was answered on June 11th by Selectman Betancourt, who said that what happens is that qualified candidates drop out when the appearance that somebody else is being pushed in comes forward. And one of the candidates that and that's exactly what happened. And one of the candidates that dropped out, in fact, mentioned that vote twice on their letter saying that they were dropping out. So I'm opposed to just interviewing people just to fill some quota that makes no sense. We got the most qualified candidates, we interview them, and we have a fantastic candidate in Ms. Wong.
Let's stick just to the
We can
interview
leave that
process.
for
Point of
one seat.
information,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, because Mr. Mariano, I believe, referred to Ms. Wong's email, and I didn't see any reference in that email, with all due respect.
I did not reference Ms. Wong's email.
Okay,
I thought that's what you just
one-
did.
one-
You said
one-
the candidate had
one at a time, please.
Okay.
Jackie, go
If I
ahead.
misunderstood you, I apologize, but I thought that's what you were saying.
I said one of the candidates in his email resignation pointed out to the vote on June 11th. That's Mr. Phil Lemnios pointed out that we were extending the process and that was one of the reasons.
Point
that
of
he was
information, we can put in the record his actual email, because I believe you're paraphrasing it, but he did indicate about support by the board, but I do not believe, in my memory, that he referred to the June 11th vote. So I just want the record to be clear, that's all.
We can go back and confirm that one way or another. Okay. I think the board, I'm not hearing further progress at the moment. If the board will allow, I'll open the floor for public comment. What I would suggest is I will set a sort of a general, take 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to ask individuals to keep your comments short and pithy. You've heard our discussion, so open that. This is a board item. This is a board action item, not a public hearing, but I think it's worthwhile giving people a chance to speak. I see Mrs. Schleicher quite anxious to approach us and speak.
I can always be pithy, you know
Yes.
that.
You'd introduce yourself and
I'm not speaking.
short
for
and
myself.
pithy too. Yeah.
I'm not going to be reciting this. Just a point of personal privilege, if I may. I would like to recognize my husband, who is in the audience this evening. This is our 41st wedding anniversary, so I would like to I think it's much better, your applause, than a Hallmark card. So I thank you. I would just like to start this evening with a quote, if you don't mind, from the great Daniel
Peggy,
Patrick
I'm sorry,
Moynihan.
it's too tempting. And you dragged him here tonight?
I know.
He must be very, yeah, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Everyone is entitled to his own opinion, but not to his own facts. And I want to start with that. For those who don't know me, my name is Peggy Schleicher. I've lived in Winchester for more than 60 years. I graduated from Winchester schools, and a special note, as I just told you, it's my 41st wedding anniversary. I actually was married here in Winchester. I have participated as a town meeting member for more than 25 years and served on many boards and committees. A wise person, my father once said to me, if you see a problem, something wrong being done, and you choose to ignore it, you become part of the problem. And that's why I'm here tonight. I take no delight in having to have filed a complaint with the Attorney General's office regarding the conduct of this board. But on June 15th, something very wrong took place in this room, and I could not ignore it. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse for failing to comply with it. I want to also go over and review for you what took place. As I said in my comments to you and in my complaint, that on June 15th, I, as a member of the public, had a right to be informed of what was going to take place at that meeting. And it clearly stated that there was going to be discussion, and I think you have the language in front of you, but it was discussion of interviewing more candidates for the position. It was discussion and selection of additional candidates for interview. That did not take place, so I, as a member of the public, was not adequately warned. Instead, you chose those on the committee, 3 members of the committee, Mr. Gulabov, Mr. Betancourt, and Mr. Grenzebek, chose to put in instead to move forward on negotiations with Ms. Wong for her appointment as town manager. Totally inappropriate and a violation of open meeting law. I take no pleasure in having to do that, but I think the public has a right to know what's going on. And so my complaint was filed on June 22nd, and what I've asked for in recourse is that you take action on the item posted on 6/15, which was discussion and selection of additional candidates for interview. As of that date, you did not have any candidates, both had withdrawn. So I think it was appropriate to discuss and select additional candidates as was advertised and posted. No change was made to that posting, and so I, as a member of the public, was denied my right to participate and offer input. If you have any questions, I ask in closing that I want to thank the many people who have called me to support my position to fight for the right and the return of truth, transparency, and trust to this board, and to fight for the Winchester I have fought for so many years. I am especially grateful for the encouragement I received from many previous selectmen who are here tonight, and I thank them for their support. And many other people in the audience, many of them new residents of Winchester, who have come here to offer their encouragement and support, as well as many longtime residents. I want to put Winchester back on the right track. I think, Mr. Betancourt, you said it very well. You fell off the track, you certainly did. And that is why I've asked you to take action on the posted 6:15.
Would you like more time? We're
Pardon
beginning.
me?
Would you like more time? We're beginning to run
Yes,
out
I
of
would.
time.
I only have like
Just a
half
minute. Okay,
time.
thank you.
My complaint, I want to put Winchester back on the right track. My complaint asks you, the select board, to take action on the posted 6:15 agenda item, which was discussion and selection of additional candidates for interview for the town manager's position. Now, my closing remark, just to update it a little, Daniel Patrick Moynihan died in 2003. I am reminded of a wonderful song by Pink. I'm sure you all know it. What about us? What about us, Winchester residents? Why is Winchester so desperate to find a new town manager that it will conduct the public's business in such an embarrassing way? For those who've listed in my complaint, you've not only embarrassed yourself, you've embarrassed Winchester. Winchester deserves better. Thank you.
And thank you. Are there others that'd like to make public comments? Mr. Nuremberger?
May I approach the board, sir?
Yes, please.
Peggy's a hard act to follow.
Just remember Pink.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Board members, I'm not here to criticize.
If you'd perhaps introduce yourself.
Oh, sure. My name's Chuck Nuremberger, resident of Winchester all my life. I was chairman of the planning board, chairman of the board of selectmen. It's gonna be hard for me to call this the select board because that's not where I was. Anyways, I'm not here to criticize the board or the search committee at all, but I will tell you from my experience, I was on the board when we hired Mel Kleckman. And the reason why having more than 2 candidates matters, I think, is because if you have 4 or even 5 candidates, each selectman can then rank the candidate that they think would be the best town manager. And then you could have a round robin kind of a discussion, and actually the best candidate, the one that has the consensus vote, would come to the surface. I think it'd be a tragic mistake to have a split decision on a town manager's vote. Right now, there's a 3-2 split on this board, but after next March, that majority could go away. It could be a new majority. And at that very first meeting of the new board, the town manager could get fired. Winchester can do better than that, I think. So I would encourage the board to rethink the search committee again, come up with, I'd say, 4 or 5 candidates to interview. You know, a lot of the statements you made, they do drop off as you go along, but if you're left with 3 or 4, then you can have a discussion, a round robin discussion as to which candidate in all of your minds collectively will be the best town manager. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Others? Yes, sir. Well, either one of you.
I'm Bob Kieran, I have been a selectman, a small selectman. And as Yogi Berra said, I'll keep this as short as I can, as long as I can. Just a couple of comments. We keep referring to the search committee, which is really that they don't want to bring a candidate. Well, they are a search committee, and you're the selection committee. And if you have to have 8 candidates brought forward, it's not within them to say, we don't want to give you any. Let you make the determination whether they're qualified or not qualified. So there's a distinction between searching and selection, and the selection belongs right here. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, that's just a little common sense, because it seems to elude us here. But it appears that Ms. Long has 3 votes. No matter what we do, she got 3 votes.
We're just selecting, just the search process, right, interview process right now, but so, okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, if you just went and brought 2 more candidates in, everybody would be happy, we'd all go home tonight, and you could take your vote who you're going to put the selection. Why are we going back and forth? Interview 2 more, everybody's happy, you vote your candidate, and we all go home. That's my point of view.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Daring. Sir?
My name's Eric Beechwood. I'm a new resident here, but some of you know me because I am civically engaged. A couple of things that I've noticed, and I kind of want to point out, the back and forth on what was put on what agenda and what date and what was used. There's contention over the June 15th and what was done versus what was on the agenda, but I'd like to point out that absolutely nothing about the search committee or the candidate or the applicant was on the June 11th, so making a vote to extend or to ask for more applicants during that when it wasn't listed on June 11th's agenda, I think like we're picking and choosing which agenda we want to go after here. So either you have a problem with both, because both times were voted, or not. The other thing is that you have a search committee, the search committee was there to do a job. I'm sure that you have paperwork that went along with forming that search advisory committee as to what their responsibilities were and what your responsibilities were. You asked them to do a job, they did the job, they tried to bring you 3 or 4. It was not on them to withhold, the candidates themselves withheld, so they brought you those candidates. If 2 were left, I don't know what the issue was, and since nobody has a problem with the candidates and said that these are qualified, amazing candidates, then why do you need to bring somebody else into that? The job was already done. I think it does a great disservice to the men and women on that search committee who put a lot of time and effort and put it all out there. Public information. If you want to know the process, if you want to know what they went through, they put it there. With the exception of the names, they're withheld for their own reasons. So I think more people should know the facts in that instance before making this, and I think to keep bombing this out in one way or another and creating sides is a little disingenuous, and especially trying to point out that something that happened on one day versus what happened on another day. If you're going to look at June 15th, go back and look at June 11th.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a-
Well, let me just take public comments if I would. Is there anyone else who'd like to make public comment this time on this issue?
We have one here.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Pamela Court, I'm a Precinct 5 town meeting member. I've spoken in front of the school committee a number of times, but this is my first time in front of the Board of the Select Board.
We're glad you're here.
I always like to start out by thanking everybody on the board for the time and the effort that they put in. It's an enormous amount of work. It's an enormous amount of time. It's a lot of effort. It's a labor of love, and none of you are paid for it. So I appreciate that, and I thank you for it. I guess I'd like to point out that there's something that is distressingly lacking in this process, and it's respect. Respect for the volunteers on the search committee, who represent many factions. And while I don't know every single member, I can say that the ones that I do know of, either by name or in person, volunteer in many capacities in this town. They dedicated a lot of time and effort to this process, and to bypass it is like thumbing your nose at them. We need to respect what we ask them to do, and we need to trust them, and we need to follow that process. As to need, I'm wondering why additional candidates were requested before these candidates were even interviewed. If you are concerned that there aren't enough, why would there be a need to bring more in before determining that the ones that you had were or were not good enough? This happens all the time in the school system. I see candidates going forward for vice principal, principal, assistant superintendent, superintendent positions where 3 are selected, 1 drops out, they've got 2 to interview, and sometimes they pick one of those 2, and sometimes they say none of them are good enough, we're going to table it and wait until next year and do the search again. It's not like good candidates grow on trees. This is not an easy job to fill. There aren't a lot of people who are qualified. It's not like there's an enormous pool of talent out there. And to do things that discourage what small pool of talent is out there from looking at our town seriously is a huge, huge disservice to this town. We interview people to find the right person for the town, but those interview processes are a two-way street. And it's also a way for good candidates to find out if this is a town they want to work in. So how we conduct ourselves during meetings, how community members speak publicly and write publicly on this matter, all of these things reflect on this community. If we want to attract the best, we have to be the best. And right now, we are not being our best. Retaining counsel and a board member, I'm just finding this out tonight, is kind of shocking to me. For a board member to be bringing in counsel and making a complaint against the other board members, I can't imagine any decent, qualified candidate looking at this town and saying, I want to work there.
Would you like another half a minute?
Yes, please. I think that respect for the candidate means respecting the process, making it as transparent as possible, and being honest with ourselves and one another, and to welcome a new town manager into a community that says that we respect one another. I just want to point out one really striking thing that I noticed. There were a few striking things that I noticed during the interview process, but one in particular, which caused me great dismay, was one of our board members asked our female pregnant candidate if she worked full-time, and then twice told her, and I'm quoting, "There's no wrong answer here." I have to say that, to me, made, as a woman, as somebody who has interviewed people, as somebody who has been interviewed as an electrical engineer in a highly professional environment, I cringed. That, to me, was not putting our best foot forward. Thank you.
We're running up against our time. Are there one or two other people who would like to make comments? Otherwise, I will close the public discussion and bring it back to the board. Okay, hearing none, I'll bring it back to the board. I'm sorry, yes, please.
My name is Hui. I just came to the meeting. I didn't plan to speak.
The town manager has correctly reminded me that this is unfortunately not a World Cup event, so we really would ask you to refrain from clapping or any other comments during people's testimony. Appreciate that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Thank you
Start again.
Thank you for giving me the chance. I didn't plan to speak, but I found out I may express my feeling. I came to this country for 20 years ago, and I live in this town for 13 years. I cannot speak for all the new immigrants, but for a friend of my circle, we share some common feelings. We appreciate this country's democratic system, and we always believed it's a good system. Is transparency, and people's voice can be heard, and everything is kind of relatively pretty fair. This select town manager, to be honest, 2 points quite shock on me. The first is this is a very important job and a very decent job with high pay. I'm pretty surprised. It's hard to select somebody, and not a lot of good candidates. Like from my point of view, simple point of view, like a lot of residents in this town, they should be qualified, and maybe there's some interest conflict, like Mr. Michael Bettencourt implies, like people may not select the town, the resident in this town. I'm not sure about that. For me, if I can serve this town, it's my biggest honor. I will put all my effort. I don't know why people just kind of don't want people in this town to be on the candidate list. And the second is, for the people withdrawn, I don't understand why you have to put them back. Like, I'm a Chinese ancestor. I came from China, okay? But for me, I only want people best fit for this position. I don't care what his or her race background, race background or whatever. It should be the best people qualified for this job, and it doesn't matter. A lot of things, it doesn't matter. Just best people work good for this position. And I support like the procedure should be transparent and fair and no surprise to anybody, convincing. And that's me and at least my circle of friends think this way. We don't really care male or female, what race. We really don't care those kind of things. And yeah, that's
Good,
about.
good. Thank you.
I think.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to return the discussion to the table. I guess we have had discussion of the interview process at this point. I've covered broadly the further consideration. I guess the pleasure of the board, we have several options. One is to leave stand the decision at our other meeting or to revise it. Is there preference on the part of the board or motions?
I apologize, I don't understand the question.
Okay. At this point, we've had a discussion under
Yep.
item 1B.
Yep.
And the question is, do we want to leave, is it the pleasure of the board to leave our decision as it was, that which was to close the interview process, or do we want to change that decision?
Mr. Chairman, point of information, so are you looking to ratify what was motioned on the 15th?
On the 11th.
On the,
Or turn it, or reverse it?
Mr. Chairman, I would not say
Reverse it.
ratify it.
Yeah,
Just
vote it
reach a
anew.
new decision as a result of this public discussion,
Okay.
whether it's the same decision as the 11th or the 15th or something else.
And it's
and so what is that motion?
It's open
Or the
for
question.
anybody's
Open for,
motion.
open to be framed, but
Okay.
the last motion we took was to close the interview phase and conduct no further interviews. So that's the situation that stands today. The question is, does the board want to do anything different? And if not, then that decision stands, I believe.
the one from
Under
the 15th.
1B, do we need to take another vote? It doesn't say
Or we could-
that we need to take a
if we
vote.
want.
Only
I mean, that's up to the
1C.
board.
Does the agenda show that we should take a vote?
Well, because,
We took
Well, I'd like to hear town council's
I think
opinion on it.
1B encompasses the authority to take a new vote on the
Okay.
process,
All right.
whether that vote, whatever that vote may be.
All right, so I'd like to move that we suspend the town manager selection process pending negotiations. Search process pending negotiations
and
with a candidate.
Okay, so I will turn to town council and ask if the wording is sufficiently clear so we don't trip over ourselves. This is, you want to suspend the interview
And I
search
wanted to suspend the
process.
search process, yes.
Pending the negotiation.
Pending
of a contract.
negotiations of a contract with a candidate.
Meaning that if
Well.
you cannot reach. the
If we
contract,
cannot reach a
you will
contract, then we will
resume-
resume the search process.
I would just ask that that be broken down and that, with all due respect, that maybe that should be two motions, because I think as a point of order, and I'm looking at town council here, shouldn't the first motion be, with all due respect to Mr. Goluboff, whether or not this board will be interviewing further candidates? Just that simple. In other words, what the June 11th vote was, because it seems like that's what the revote was on June 15th. So shouldn't that,
That would be another way to do it, that's implicit in the motion.
it's like a
to suspend.
predicate.
But if you want to make it explicit, that's fine.
I mean, it's,
Make it explicit if we could.
yeah, I mean, so
So I
basically,
move that we suspend the search process, which includes not interviewing other candidates,
Okay, so take no more interviews,
To
or
take-
conduct no more interviews.
conduct no more interviews by either this board or the search advisory committee, pending negotiations with town manager.
that's when I kind of get a little confused. So,
Okay, so just suspend. If negotiations fall through at some point, we can change the motion. That's fine. Just
okay,
suspend.
I just think that that's almost like, with all due respect, almost like telescoping B and C. It seems like, just for clarity, that the record should, and with all due respect, and I'm not disagreeing, I'm just saying, I think it should be broken down for legal purposes. I think it's important that the first motion would be, in your vernacular, to not further interview any other candidates. And then the next one related to Ms. Wong, but I think that needs to be a second one, particularly given how the agenda reads, because I think your first motion, the way you've described it, with all due respect, would potentially be out of order because it's telescoping B and C. So-
I would agree with Mrs. Welsh.
Yes.
So if we restrict the first motion to just suspending the interview process and not, how would you word it,
No,
as
go
you
ahead,
guys want?
go ahead.
Okay, and then, and thank you very much, and I understand that motion, and I appreciate the patience of my fellow board members and also our town council.
Okay.
Just one other quick question as a predicate, are we assuming then that we're back to June 15th with 2 withdrawn candidates, or not necessarily? We're sort of where we are
I
now,
think
or where we were
we're
then?
where we are now. I think the question.
And where we are now, just for the record, is 2 previously withdrawn candidates, but 1, did the town make an offer to Ms. Wong?
We told her that we would be interested in talking with her about making an offer and building a contract. So,
Okay,
but I
sort of
think
a
I think the
predicate.
issue right now is just,
No, I just wanted to know where we are in our head.
I think
what
that's
the facts are.
irrelevant sort of to the motion. The issue on the table is, do we continue with more interviews or not? And I think Mr. Golubov's proposal is that we basically stop the interview process at this point and not conduct any additional interviews.
Right, okay, I think it's important to have it
And
just
then,
be
and
that
then,
part
as
of
you
the motion.
pointed out, if
Yeah.
later, we have to come back, we can certainly open, if we have no candidates, we could come back and do that. Is there somebody written that down in the way we can read it again?
Whatever you think
'Cause-
my motion is.
Okay. Do we have I'm sorry,
Patty have it right?
Patty?
Yeah, that the
Okay.
select board suspend the town manager search process.
Well, I would say that we.
At this time, do not conduct any other
The
interviews.
motion would be to conduct no further
Interviews.
as part of the town manager selection process. Does that make?
At this point, other than it being a double negative, but
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Do we have a second? Okay, do we have further discussion by the board? Mr. Rico?
Yeah, I would be opposed to that for, if no other reason. Having one candidate leaves us with no negotiation ability. Ms. Wong could name her price, and to restrict us to one person, I think, is not in the best interest of the town, and I would be opposed to that. And that would be one of the reasons why I would be opposed to that motion.
If I may, that's why I said that we would suspend the process and not that we would finish it, right? So that if we don't come to an agreement, we can just restart the process.
And the contract will come back to us, as well. So it doesn't mean that we are approving a contract. We are just approving suspension of the process at this point. And
Yeah, if we were to go ahead and offer or reoffer, make the offer, we would then have to negotiate a contract, and that contract has to be approved by our board before it can be executed. So if the candidate we're negotiating with provides or asks for outrageous terms, we can say no, thank you. And then we would be back to do more interviews, so.
Yeah, so my just further discussion, just very briefly, is that with all due respect to the board members, I just think it's important, given the level of this position, that we have a couple of more candidates to compare. This, I think very constructive comments have been pointed out previously, including by former selectmen. But for me personally, I just think it would be great, and just to compare, and then maybe we just, are so unified behind one candidate that it seems great. So, and nobody even said that the search committee couldn't be involved necessarily in assisting this board with figuring out 2 other resumes. I just think that it's a good practice for this board, because we're making the decision, and this, otherwise it's sort of like the search committee has, and I think that there's no question that everyone has so much respect for all the time and effort that they've put in. So it's not in any way a comment about them, because they've done a fantastic job. It's just the nature of municipal employment. I guess sometimes people, for whatever reason, whether they're negotiating with their current employer, or for whatever reason, that some drop out. We've experienced that, and apparently, as Mr. Betancourt I think was pointing out, that's not that uncommon with other towns. But it seems like just the point for me is that I think because of the high level of this position, because of the high salary level, those candidates, that we did attract a lot of candidates to this position. And most importantly, the search committee itself has acknowledged they wanted to give us more candidates, but those dropped out. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't give us the next down the list or anybody else. And it sounded like, before I was on the board, that Mr. Rico was saying that in February, this board asked the search committee to, correct me if I have this wrong, but to provide us with 3 resumes. So it's no reflection on the candidates. It's simply so that we're doing a complete job and have a comparative, and all the more reason now where even if Ms. Wong's status is not as a withdrawn candidate, still we only have her candidacy. So anyway, thank you for your time, my fellow board members listening.
I just want to say too, the Town Manager Search Advisory Committee voted earlier by unanimous roll call vote, 7-0, not to add an additional candidate from the pool of applicants. And I think they have explained that their job was to put forward out of the applicant pool the most qualified applicants there for us to make a decision on. And putting someone in a pool that is not as qualified as they thought based on the criteria they developed is, I don't see the purpose of that. And I think by voting 7-0, the Town Manager Search Advisory Committee probably thought that too.
Okay. I guess I'd like to, sir, yes.
Before you put that to a vote, I'm going to actually recommend simplifying the motion a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not sure of all the implications of a vote to suspend the process. So I think to take the smallest bite possible, it would be just a decision on, a motion on whether to conduct further interviews or not.
I agree with you.
Which I think is what Ms. Welch was
Yes, exactly.
saying. There's nothing that I can put my finger on that's wrong with the motion as framed, but a smaller step I think would be better.
Okay.
It's definitely clear.
So what should, if you will, what should the motion say?
If I captured your motion correctly, it would be a motion to decide not to conduct any further interviews for the town manager position at this time.
So moved.
Okay.
And may I just have one other point of information before we take the vote? So does that mean we also wouldn't be discussing in a public forum this candidacy, that we'd move right to item number C? Is that fair to assume?
I think item number C would be discussing the candidate, whether we want to reaffirm the offer.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Seconded, right?
Second.
Is there an opportunity for comment from the?
Not at this point, sir. I apologize. But I guess I would like to add a couple comments. So we've had a very, both before and during the interviews, we've had a very sprawling debate over the interview process. I think we've been told that somehow the advisory committee fell off the track, had the wrong criteria, failed to screen the things. I'm not sure that's the case. We spent a great deal of effort, and the board signed off on the members, the criteria, and our explicit instructions were to them, bring us the best candidates you can find. We've been told that we should have interviewed more. That would have been nice. They did intend to bring 3. One dropped out. We can't control that, as we've said. They were asked, are there additional candidates that you think meet the level of performance and experience and qualifications that we should interview? And they've said definitively and unfortunately no. So we have 2 candidates. They both recommended very highly when we interviewed both of them. There were suggestions we should interview other local candidates, or we should go fishing for people and the things like that. All fine, except I think our search committee told us that none of that crowd of other things had the fit that matched what we need in Winchester at this time. So while I hear the argument that it would have been nice to have more than 3, we don't. And the problem with the debate we've had is that I think we've introduced considerable uncertainty and acrimony into the process. And I think the unfortunate part of that is we've clearly discouraged, if not intimidated, a couple of the candidates to say no. One of them clearly sort of said, thank you very much. He went back to his board of selectmen. They offered him more money, and he said, thank you. Nice town in Winchester, but I'm gone. And the other candidate was on the verge of pulling out. I think one of the reasons we moved as we did on Friday to make the offer was for fear that we would then lose the other of the 2 highly qualified candidates that we'd asked the town search committee to spend so much time looking for. In my opinion, our debate, while interesting, has not been terribly productive and has not really served the town's interests in attracting and retaining the best qualified candidates. And that's our charge under the charter, is to find the best qualified candidates. So I think the search committee worked very hard, recommended excellent candidates, and neither we nor the town should disregard their service. So I will now call for.
Personal preference. I simply can't sit here and hear this inaccuracy stated one more time. You said that Ms. Long did not withdraw.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, apologize, I did not say that, thank you very much.
Did she withdraw or not? I think that's a very
She withdrew, but we then offered her we offered her the opportunity to reconsider, and she did.
Did you offer Mr. Lemios?
No, at that point, he had confirmed to us that he was no longer interested in being an applicant.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
I just want to make sure the
Okay.
record reflects what was asked.
Thank you.
And written.
So, I'm sorry, back to the business at hand. So we have a motion on the table, it's seconded. I will take a roll call vote. Because I've been picking on Ms. Welch all the time. I'll start with Mr. Rico.
No.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
The chair votes yes, so the decision and the motion is passed 3-2. Okay, we then need to take up item 1C, which is the item that was missing at the previous discussion, which is to formally offer a candidate the position of town manager and to authorize the chair and the town council to open negotiations on a contract. So I would open the floor to the board again for discussion on this issue. Do we have any further discussion? Mr. Rico.
So, it's interesting where it says, or another candidate. You know, one of the questions I have is, there were 4 candidates that backed out, including Ms. Wong. But for some reason, the board is selecting to only go to Ms. Wong to offer her the job. Why not the other 3 candidates that backed out? You know, as I understand, the number 3 was one of the top 3, so why wouldn't we be going back and saying, hey, you know, would you consider coming back in and take the position? Why 1 and not the 4?
It's my understanding, and the search committee can confirm this, that the 3rd candidate, when they went to publicly shortlist the 3 candidates, the protocol was to call all 3 candidates and ask them if they wished to continue in the selection process. And the 3rd candidate said, thank you, but definitively no. He asked his name not be made public and asked not to be continued. Whatever his reasons, he said he was going to stay with his current job. So, and Mr. Was never brought before us. Mr. Lemnios indicated early in our discussions with him in the interview process that he had been asked by his select board to stay there. Well, he reported that he was interviewing with us. Their select board said we were not sure as we went into Thursday whether he was still interested, because he had said he was going to be meeting with his select board on that Thursday evening. I asked Mr. Howard to contact him and see if he was still interested. He said no, or he said he was going into the meeting and would call us back, and at about 11 or 12 at night, sent a message back saying, thank you very much for the pleasure of interviewing in Winchester, but his board had made him a better offer, and he had told them that he would stay there. So so that eliminated the 2nd candidate. So, okay, so the floor right now is open to discussion of whether we, and as it's written down this time, to discuss and vote a potential offer of town manager position of Lisa Wong or another candidate, and to authorize the chair and the town council to begin contract negotiations. So I would, Mrs. Welch, did you comment? I'm sorry.
I was just going to comment briefly that we had the pleasure of interviewing her and Ms. Wong, and also seeing her CV, and it was really, really great time to have that opportunity, and it was great. So my only issue, and I know we already have the vote, is just that at this point, even though procedurally we've decided she's no longer, I guess, correct me if I have this wrong, town council or anyone on the board, that we're not viewing her as a withdrawn candidate. So therefore, because I would think that we wouldn't be discussing a withdrawn candidate necessarily, but, so I'm still a little fuzzy whether or not she's a withdrawn candidate. But even putting that aside, I guess I would just love to have the benefit of, even if her CV is superlative to someone else, just having the benefit of seeing someone else, but I respect the fact that the board just voted. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation, and so there's other aspects about her candidacy that I think the CV speaks for itself, and I think the last 2.5 years she's been doing some other things, some of which, other than as mayor of Fitchburg, and I just think that's relevant, and I think some other aspects about her candidacy are relevant, but it's really difficult to talk about them in a silo when the board has already decided we're not allowed to interview anybody else. So, I mean, I'm not complaining, I'm just restating the status. So, you know what I mean?
We have decided, however, we did go through a search committee process and had.
No,
fully
I understand that. I'm just saying,
so on,
as
so-
far as this, item number
Well, we did-
C, yeah, that's where we are. We're sort of in a silo. It's sort of like this is kind of the option.
You're correct. I think that we did interview both candidates, so we did have a fairly substantial choice at that time. Unfortunately, as I said before, our process has discouraged, Mr. Lemnios from participating, so
I disagree with that as a
down
point
to
of
one.
order.
And we do have an email from Mrs. Wong saying that, yes, she, on paper, saying she would be happy to be considered. So although she was indicating she'd withdrawn, we asked her, are you firm on that, as we asked Mr. Lemnios? He said yes, and she said, no, I'd be happy to reconsider and
Right, I
consider the
understand.
position.
So basically, it's whether or not, but since we've closed off anyone else, basically, I think our options are either intercontract negotiations with Ms. Wong, or else, I don't know what, not have a town
Well, I
manager?
think you're
Because we've
correct.
already voted, you know what I mean, which is, I'm not criticizing anything, I'm just wanted to be clear where we are.
Yes, we asked our HR director to do educational, employment, Corey, and other checks and references. If during the process of our negotiations with her, we are not able to arrive at a mutually agreeable set of contract terms, then, that'll be that'll be it. That'll be our board's decision as to what constitutes a good contract, and at that point, if we find that we can't conclude the job offer to her, then we'll have to go back and. do it
Right, I
again.
understand all that, I'm just saying the board has already, by its vote,
I
and town
understand
council
that.
can weigh in, we don't have any other option. In other words, there are no other candidates that this board is permitted to interview, so therefore, I'm not criticizing anything, I'm just understanding the current situation.
We have
so-
arrived at a point where we have no
Right,
others.
that's all I'm saying. Okay,
That's
thank
correct.
you.
Yes, sir. Or, I'm sorry, Mariano, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to thank the selection committee that did a fantastic job, has been working for many months. And I heard, from so many people that they wanted somebody that was just like Richard, right? And I think, from Ms. Wong's, just from her resume, right, having been mayor of a city larger than Winchester, the experience, just like Richard, the experience with bringing up the finances of such a city that had a triple B minus rating to an A something rating. She did a fantastic job with the finances. She did a great job. And, in interviewing, when you're interviewing for a corporate position or for any position, you look at the best indication of how somebody's going to behave in the future is how they behaved in the past. And what she did with bringing businesses to the city of Fitchburg and her answers to the interview questions related to that, about being proactive, reaching out to businesses that were looking for space, knowing what spaces were available here, with what she did with housing in Fitchburg. I just think that she is a fantastic candidate beyond with what the resume said, but also from the interview that we had with her here. And I am looking forward to the contract negotiations, if we vote to have contract negotiations with her, being positive, and at some point letting Richard get on his sailboat and have a fantastic replacement for a town manager.
I didn't know you were buying me a sailboat.
His favorite summer cottage
He
is
goes
right
to
next to.
surprise Mariano.
Yeah, is right next to the Bushes compound up in Kennebunk. Maybe they'll buy it, maybe you buy that for him. So I guess, Mr. Rico.
Mr. Chairman, so, that was a strong point advocating for Ms. Wong. So if we're making strong points for her, are we allowed to bring up something that maybe would be of concern and part of the due diligence?
You may,
Well,
and keep in mind the candidate isn't here to
Well,
respond.
again, so we heard some compliments. So one of the concerns from hearing from residents that there was a $1.5 million lawsuit that Ms. Wong lost for inappropriately hiring and the police chief in Fitchburg. So, that's a concern, but it doesn't seem to be talked about. And one of the concerns I have is we all expressed the concern that we'd all be allowed to go into the community of where the candidates came from and do some due diligence, talk to people in the town. How was this person as a manager and whatnot? Are we going past that? Because again, that was something that I heard from and got a printout of the newspapers from that case when Ms. Wong inappropriately fired the police chief. So that's a negative. So are there more negatives? Or are we going to be able to have that ability to do our due diligence?
I would say we would have the ability to complete some due diligence. We've asked our HR director to look at the basics. If it's the board's decision that they would like to interview people she's worked with in Fitchburg or in Boston, we can arrange that. She's given us a number of names already for references for that purpose, so we can start with those and add more if we need to. So I think the short answer to your question is yes. Okay. You have comments?
To Mr. Arico's point, if we do decide tonight to move forward with contract negotiations with Lisa Wong, I would be happy to engage her references in a conversation about her performance. I think, as you mentioned, she has already submitted some to us.
Okay.
I would think we would all have the ability to
Yes, we could
reach equal stakeholders, and we'd want to.
we could certainly arrange that. Yes.
Some due diligence.
Okay.
And I would just add, I believe the town manager's office received some comments from a current town employee who had experience being an employee when Ms. Wong was mayor, and those concerns seemed important to consider and to acknowledge from a current employee. So I'm not exactly sure how this board wants to kind of handle that, but whether or not that should be a further discussion or something so that there isn't, I don't know what you'd say, sort of like an awkwardness or something like that, just to acknowledge, the concerns of the current employee.
Yeah, we could certainly work with Michelle Tassi, our HR director. She's been conducting a lot of the confidential reference checks, so we could certainly arrange to do that. So.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Okay, so I guess I would offer the board my comments, and I think I'm going to reaffirm my earlier vote to offer the position to Lisa Wong. Briefly as why. I think Mr. Howard has done an absolutely excellent job as town manager. And under his leadership, all our departments and staff work very hard and effectively to deliver services and successfully fund and complete dozens of critical and fairly expensive projects. But as he has warned us many times, our budget is getting tighter and tighter, and the causes are pretty clear. They're good ones. Population in Winchester is growing. We're just under 23,000, which was the highest it's been since Mr. Tonello and I were young. The student enrollments have grown from 3,000 to about 4,600 or 4,700. All the parents in this town seem to want to educate their children, and that's putting considerable pressure on our staff. And at the same time, Proposition 2.5 caps our tax revenue, and one of the things that Mr. Howard has done is balance out our budgets very, very tightly. I think those of you who have tried to run $100 and some million corporation will understand that doing this when everybody's yelling at you, spending more, spending less, is very difficult. The sum of that is we're going to be very hard pressed to maintain our services in schools. We're certainly in good financial shape, but it's going to get tighter and tighter. And I think we need to look for ways to deliver services and projects without jamming up our tax cost to our residents. So, whether it's software, equipment, training, we need to make sure that our departments get the help they need to deliver the very best services we can as cost effectively as possible. And I think all of our residents expect that from us. So I've tried to convince Mr. Howard to stay here for another 7 years to solve all these. He keeps graciously declining, no matter how much wine we give him and papers, things like that. But failing to convince Richard, and you all can beat up on him this evening, I would agree that I think Mrs. Wong is the best qualified of the new candidates. I would keep in mind, as you think about this, that the town manager's position is an executive and administrative decision, not a policy-making decision. It's our responsibility, school committee, the other, and ultimately town meeting responsibility to set policies for the town. The town manager executes them. Mr. Howard has said the transition from being a mayor to a town manager is entering a different world, but he's done it effectively, and I think other people can do it. But it's really up to our board to show the leadership and set policy directions and what we want to do. So with that, is there a motion to...
Can I just make one other comment?
Yes, ma'am.
If I could. So I think that as difficult as this experience has been for many of us, and perhaps many of those in the room and watching on WinCam, I do think it's been an exercise in everyone kind of coming together, even if we disagree, to try to kind of in our own way sort of figure out how we prioritize some aspects of Winchester and how we see sort of selection process and town governance. So even though this has been difficult for many of us, I do think ultimately, I mean, we have a room full of people here, which I think is a really great thing for a town. Even if some people disagree with others, it's still a great thing to know that we can, in a respectful way, have a constructive conversation about something so important to the town. So, Mr. Chairman, I really wanted to thank everyone again for being here and listening on WinCam. And while this process may have been avoidable as far as the experience, ultimately, you know, perhaps it's kind of sharpened a lot of people's sort of, you know, interest level in some of the kind of more everyday or routine aspects of what we do as governance, as in addition to larger issues such as, you know, schools and new school buildings and that sort of thing. As I said at the beginning, and I'll just say to this board, I really want to get behind the town manager, the new town manager. It's very important to me personally and also professionally. And I do think it's important for the town manager to know that the select board is full of, you know, is supportive and constructive. I think the process, you know, as I've already said, was not necessarily an ideal situation as far as the number of candidates, but I do think it's important to, in my situation, to not vote against her. I think that she's certainly qualified, and it's no reflection on her. I simply wanted to be able to compare, like anybody making any kind of a selection, my job with another candidate. That's all. But obviously, because of the first vote, we're in a situation where that won't be possible. And for me personally, I don't want to, at this point where we don't have another option, to vote against her, because what's the other option? That we don't have a town manager, because that's where we are. So having said all that, as much as I want to vote for her, I'm inclined to abstain, but it's no reflection on whether or not I think that, you know, with the majority that she'll be a fine town manager. So it's just that given the procedural posture, it's difficult for me to have an affirmative vote. But on the other hand, because of those reasons about town cohesion, it's difficult for me to have a negative vote at this point, particularly given that there's no option that we've been presented. Otherwise, we'd have no town manager because of the first vote. So
Okay.
I just wanted to state that for the record, and I appreciate your patience letting me do that.
Good, thank you very much. I mean, after we take the vote, we also have the option of taking a vote to make it unanimous. So I can, we will, if anyone wishes to consider that. So on the table right now, I would ask the chair will take a motion to offer the town manager position to Lisa Wong and authorize the chair and the town council to begin contract negotiations.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded?
And just for the record, is
Yes, ma'am.
that pending the reference check or not necessary to put in the motion? I'm just asking because I think it was in the other one.
The due diligence.
Yeah.
Certainly would say yes, pending satisfactory completion of the reference checks.
That would just be part of the contract negotiation,
Yeah,
right?
but I think I'd agree. It was in the other
Right.
contract.
Just for
It was on the other
consistency.
vote, and I think it's consistent. Yeah, okay. So we have a motion and a second, and we have the wording captured.
Well, most of it. I'm
Most
gonna
of
have to talk to Arthur in the morning.
Okay. Motion on the table. Let me start. I'll pick on Mr. Betancourt this time.
Yes.
I abstain for the reasons
Abstaining,
stated.
thank you.
No.
No?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So the motion carries. Vote is 3-1, and 1 abstention. So, do any of the members wish to put a motion to make the action unanimous at this point? If not,
So moved.
okay, do we have a second to do it? And I will
Second?
second. Is there further comment, or do we wish to go ahead with that?
To-
I'm reflecting.
Yeah, to Ms. Welch's point, I
Mrs.
think.
Welch's
yeah.
gracious comments that
I
we
think
need
it's
to be
important that we move
united.
forward, as a unified group, and that we respect Ms. Wong and also the work of the Town Manager Search Advisory Committee, and we send the message that if we move forward with Ms. Wong, that she has the support of our town.
Okay, I don't want to force a vote that would make you uncomfortable, but I guess,
I totally respect that. I guess I just kind of feel like I'm not voting negatively towards her. The majority has it, and I am looking forward to working with her and
okay.
assuming that all these, the
So,
regular
if
process.
the sense of the
So
board is
I
that
think
that,
that's where we
things,
were with the
I
last
would
vote.
ask that we perhaps withdraw the motion.
Withdrawn?
Okay, withdrawn, okay. So thank you very much. We'll take a couple-minute recess. If those of you would like to stay and go through some of the more mundane details of
What is the
board work.
next topic? What is the next topic?
Wildwood Cemetery Advisory Committee.
Several, I hope, brief items to deal with. The first is listed on your agenda as the Wildwood Cemetery Advisory Committee. We need to make reappointments to the committee. Mr. Ryerson is one of our appointees, and I think Mrs. O'Connell is the other. So, Mr. Ryerson, is your last a chance to escape reappointment? I don't really want to offer you an opportunity for a long soliloquy on.
At the pleasure of the board, first of all, we'd like to thank you for your years of service, which have been amazing. Thank you so much.
It's nice to see the board. We haven't been down to see you folks lately, but we have a lot of projects online. The town meeting passed the...
Actually, you might, Bill, if you want to, so it'd be recorded for posterity.
One of the items coming up, town meeting approved the $50,000 expenditure to take out that fence area on Palmer Street opposite the tennis courts and clean that all up and put a rail in, sort of like we have in Sirocco Way in the back of the cemetery. That'll greatly improve that area. It's all overgrown and you can't get in there to work on it, so it's a big mess now. So that'll be a big improvement, and we'll have to start working on that very soon. Other than that, the columbarium has worked out well. It's sold about a little over a third of the niches already. So probably sometime in the near future, we ought to start thinking about columbarium number 2. It took me 40 years to get number 1 in, so I think it might be appropriate to it might be appropriate to start working on it. At least we've worked our way. But other than that, everything is working out pretty well. It looks fine over there. Looked great for Memorial Day. Barbara couldn't be here tonight. She had another thing to attend, but she's very helpful as vice chairman. Great person to work with, and we'd appreciate to both be reappointed. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Yes, I move that we reappoint William Ryerson and Barbara O'Connell to the Wildwood Cemetery Advisory Committee with terms to expire May 31st, 2021.
Second.
Last chance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen.
No, we have to vote. I'm offering you the last chance to say no. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays, ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Mrs. Welch has asked that we take up the last item on the agenda. She had a brief discussion about our protocol and decorum, and then we'll move on to...
Yeah, and just for the board's information, because the agenda item includes the memo that town council thoughtfully provided the board, we just thought we'd take this out of order since town council is here currently, and thank you, Attorney Krieger, for being here. But my focus is actually on decorum at meetings, so, and I'll be very brief. So I've only been on the board for 3 months, but during this time, I was so surprised on June 15th to be apparently one of the recipients of an ad hominem conduct or allegation by someone on this board. During the June 15th meeting, me as well as other people on the board were apparently the people to which those comments were directed. And I think that all of us are capable of making strong arguments without engaging in ad hominem attacks on any member of this board. Tonight, in my humble view, I was also the target of yet another ad hominem conduct allegation by someone else on this board. Aside from the fact that I think both are completely baseless, the fact that in both of these instances, the merits of their arguments didn't go to the surface, but instead a direct attack that was personal did instead. And I've never been part of an organization where I was subjected to that. I'm an officer of the court. I've been a member of the bar in Massachusetts for many years, and this is the first time that I've ever had this experience. And I really hope that board members will refrain in the future from ad hominem attacks, personal attacks on other board members. First of all, it doesn't help their arguments. The arguments are based on the merits. And second of all, the effect of that is really to bully the other member. And I think it's entirely inappropriate. And I ask my colleagues to henceforth refrain from doing so. In addition, after the meeting on June 15th, after that meeting, I simply asked a procedural question, and I was shouted at by Mr. Betancourt, Mr. Goluboff, and the chair, Mr. Grensbeck. And I was so rattled for the rest of the day and the weekend because, again, I've never been treated that way, certainly not through my practice of law, but not even personally. And I couldn't believe that tensions were so high that I would be shouted at when I was simply asking a question. And even if people disagree with anyone, I would just respectfully ask our board members, each of whom I respect very much, to please try to refrain from yelling at any other board member. It's completely not appropriate. It doesn't help your argument. All it does is end up rattling another board member, and it's not constructive. And even though one of the members, Mr. Goluboff, apologized afterwards, he did so in such an abrupt manner that I couldn't even put it all together, because I was so stunned by the experience that I had just endured. So while I thank you for your apology, Mr. Goluboff, I just ask that everyone on the board attempt, we're only human, not to raise their voice at other people on the board. I was chair of the planning board, as many of you know, and I was on the planning board for 4 years. Most of us disagreed on almost every issue with each other. But one of the things that I was always so happy about whenever I would go home after our late meetings is that we conducted ourselves with decorum and with respect for each other. And when the vote was over, we moved on. And as chair, procedure was very important to me. And I'd like to think that this board henceforth will abide by any sort of admonitions by the chair to remind members of this board to treat each other civilly. And I'm not asking for any kind of response or motion or anything like that. I'm simply asking that all of us, including myself, try to treat each other respectfully henceforth and with decorum. And I believe that the level of this office requires that. I know that in the last couple of weeks, things seem to have been heated, but I think the true test of character is how people comport themselves in those situations. And but we are all human, and I appreciate that. But I am reaching out and asking everyone on this board, including myself, to treat each other respectfully and with decorum. And for the record, I'd like each of you to know that I respect you a great deal.
Okay. Thank you, and we will certainly look forward to
I would like to
maintaining-
say, seeing as we're putting this in the record, I do not remember a situation as Ms. Welch has characterized it, where Mr. Grenzebach, Mr. Goluboff, and I were raising our voices. I think that part of the decorum is listening to other members as well, and there was a situation where there was a comment by Ms. Welch that was out of order, and continuing to discuss something that's not part of our session would be a violation of open meeting law. And I think that is where that's where that conversation was going. And
Even if that's the case, you didn't have to yell at me.
I
And so if
did
you
not
want to
yell.
talk, well, you did,
Okay.
okay? And also, my view of it is what's relevant,
Let's,
okay? So that's all I have.
I
And
disagree.
so,
Right.
that's fine, you can disagree for the record.
We were in executive session at the time, and I think part of the discussion was that we were sliding off into topics that were not.
Well, I disagree because I was simply asking a question. So in
I-
any event, my
the
point
que-
is simply about decorum.
The problem with that discussion was the question brought up a topic that was not on the executive session. So your admonition is good, and we will work to do that, and I will pledge to try to maintain as much decorum as we
Thank you,
can.
I appreciate it.
All right, so let's move on to item 3. We've had a group working on the town common improvements, and I think, Jackie, you volunteered to
Oh,
give us an update.
yes, and this will be brief, but I wanted to just update the board that there has been a town common working group that many of you are probably already aware of. We continue to make a lot of progress. There's been some great discussion around some renderings from the very esteemed David Sterling, architect. And at this point, where this is that the Design Review Committee will be reviewing what seems to be the current rendering that the working group has been discussing. And that'll happen in mid-July, and then the working group will have another meeting to keep kind of moving the project. In addition, there was a interest by the working group to
I'll check with it.
to create a town common advisory committee, because not only so that we can more formally discuss the project about the town common and upgrading some of the entryways at 3 locations and making the already beautiful town common even more beautiful, but also that going into the future, that would be in the interest of the town to have a town common advisory committee. So at this point, Mr. Chair, at the pleasure of the board, I would move that the town common working group be changed to a town common advisory committee. And if I haven't accurately articulated that motion, then I'd, at the pleasure of the chair, ask for you to edit it.
Yeah, I guess the only, the useful things to have, we don't have to complete it all tonight, but we can agree to do it, would be to have a written charge and some outline of how many bodies you want to appoint, how many members.
I think the thinking of the working group was to have the same group, but if that's not appropriate.
Well, that may be fine, but I think the question is just, once we form a formal, the working group has been used because it's somewhat flexible, people come and go.
Sure, yeah.
Once we set up an advisory committee, is it advisory to the town manager and the board? A charge, number of members, we have some examples we've used for some of the others we can get out. Should they have staggered terms, you know, for how long, year,
Okay,
2 years,
sure.
3 years?
Whatever you.
And we could, I'd be happy to get you some examples.
Okay, so would you suggest that I kind of work towards that, and then one of our next meetings to kind of make a more formal motion with
Yeah, I
them,
mean,
that level of
you might
detail?
want to ask the
Okay.
sense of, might want to ask the sense of the board tonight, is that a good idea? And if the answer is yes, then.
Okay, what's the consensus of the
Okay,
board?
well, is the sense of the board, I guess I'll just go around and ask individuals.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for all the work on it. I'd like to see more what the, what some of the
I
ideas,
know, yeah,
you know, I didn't see
Yeah.
any background, like you
After the
mentioned
design
some-
review committee, and then make a sort of an interim presentation, not final, because obviously the planning board and this board would be involved in, you know,
Yeah.
providing comment.
And the other thing is, as the chair mentioned, I'd like to see how many members will be on the board, and also what,
Okay.
like, if they're staggered, and also see if maybe the moderator gets an appointment or two of the members, like if there's 7 members, if we get 5 and the moderator gets 2, something like that. I mean, we can,
Planning board.
or the planning board,
Yeah.
yeah, or if the
The
planning board
is
gets.
on it, Heather's on it.
Right, but if the planning board gets maybe 2 appointments and we get 5.
Oh, I see, sure, yeah,
right,
okay.
Depending on how many members
I
there are.
understand, and we could kind of work through that together. I'll just kind of
And then
pitch.
an at-large one or something.
Yeah, I'll pitch an idea, maybe our next meeting or 2 meetings from now, and then whatever edits you guys think is appropriate. And I'm sorry, but point of information, what did you mean by moderator?
The town moderator.
Oh, literally the moderator?
Yeah, the
Okay, I thought you were referring to somebody involved in the working group.
Oh,
Okay,
no, no, the
got it.
moderator gets appointments
Well,
to
we don't-
certain.
Okay,
We don't have to involve, I
We
mean,
don't have
we
to,
can
but-
appoint it, you could recommend an advisory committee that's entirely appointed by this group.
By the board.
By the board, and reports to the town manager and to us. Or we, you know, town meeting, obviously, their committees are appointed by the moderator or by town meeting, and then there's a bunch of them are mixed, I can't
Yeah.
think offhand, but there's several of them
Would
that
you
say, you know,
recommend?
2 people by this, 2 people by this,
Yeah.
2
Would you
people by this.
recommend?
Maybe not the moderator, but I think that involving the planning board, you know.
No,
to-
absolutely,
to,
yeah.
To appoint.
I like how we've set up the capital planning committee as well, where if there are 2 planning board appointments, only one has to be a member of the planning board. So it can be their appointment to appoint somebody that's not one of their current elected members, so.
Yeah.
Appointment or designate.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Their appointment.
Appointment or
Their
designate.
member
Yeah,
or
right.
designate.
Yeah, and we could do the same with, like, maybe one member appointed by finance committee as well, right? If there's going to be any financial implications
Yeah.
to the improvements.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, including going forward, and I was even thinking that, you know, I don't want to get ahead of this, but that we may set up some sort of quasi, like a 501c3 or something, and going forward, get donations from, because I'm sure that Town Common is so important to so many people in Winchester that, in addition to the 2 entities that have indicated that they're interested in donating, that maybe we have almost like the Public Garden
Friends
in
of Town.
Boston. Yeah, exactly, just like Friends of Boston Common, of Boston Garden. So in any event, I just wanted to update you guys, and so thank you so much for these comments, so I'll
I think
integrate all
a
those.
member of
and-
finance committee can help with that, or
Yeah.
also whether it should be a revolving fund
Sure.
that takes donations at first, maybe.
Or at
a
least to
revolving
know
fund.
that we're not
Right.
dipping into
Yeah.
the funds.
Yeah.
Because I think the idea is that we not have this be something that we need funds for. So, but I totally take your point, and also given their expertise with the numbers, so that's a great idea.
When do you meet next?
So it's in early August. Next time we have a board meeting, I'll give you guys another quick update and let you know that. So basically, Design Review Committee, if I remember, is meeting July 11th, and then they're providing some comments. Obviously, ultimately, the select board, as well as the planning board, wouldn't wanna,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, we can dig out, so there's what, 25 or 30, 40, 50 committees out there, and we can dig out fairly quickly some models that would
a
work.
template, okay.
The only thing I was going to say too is I haven't seen a lot of the plans yet, but I think it would be great for the town common to have some sort of central PA system there. I think we often get out there, people are dragging equipment, whether it be the farmer's market or the kids singing the Christmas carols, and it would be nice just to be able to plug into some central unit in the middle. Have some speakers somewhere.
The other opportunity that's been floating out there is in the discussions with the MBTA about the station. There was a question about whether the wall, which partial has to be reconstructed, could be constructed in some way, such a way so it could be converted to a kind of a temporary stage, or have lights or other things put up there so that you could sit on the common and look down
Yeah, that's a
into
neat
that area
idea.
and do things like, something that would be a good
Yeah.
good issue for
I
that.
think there were some drawings, weren't there, at some, where there's some, I don't know.
Okay.
I know
So-
I know this
so
was
I
a
guess
quick line.
So I think the sense of the board is that you're volunteered and go for it.
Okay, and I definitely want to keep the board updated so that you're completely aware of, the project and sort of going forward, because obviously it's important for the whole town, so I don't want the board to in any way think that they're not updated.
Okay. The other items here, it's getting sort of, I'm beginning to feel a little worn out from the days and the weeks. So if the board doesn't mind, we'll skip over assignments and talk just about summer meeting schedules. We have a meeting set for the 9th, it's a regular meeting, and we have the joint meeting with the planning board on the 10th to focus on the town center stuff, which might be a good opportunity also to ask the question how this committee would work that. I think we should at least pick another date in July before everybody disappears. 2 weeks out would be the 23rd. Do we have a quorum? We're going to be in, we have enough people to make a quorum in town in Winchester on the 23rd?
Sure.
Okay.
This is a select board meeting, not a joint meeting?
This is just a regular select board
okay.
meeting to pick up all our useful stuff. Usual stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with those. Then the other question is between the 9th and the 23rd, I sort of promised Beth Rudolph that we would schedule some public hearings on some of the traffic issues. As you recall, back on whenever it was, she had listed a set of things and suggested that some of them needed public hearings. So if you don't mind, I don't know how many we can deal with in an evening, maybe 2. I think there were 4 or so that needed hearings, so I'll try to schedule those in. The downside of that is that we may not get anybody to the hearing in the middle of July. On the other hand, if we have to wait till August or September, then that's not gonna
Seems like
help.
July might be better than August,
Yeah, so we'll try it, and if we don't get anybody, we can do that, so that'll be the piece. So that would cover the traffic improvements, basically setting the dates. The other items are consent agenda, unless they're, cover those, I believe there's only 3 items.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve a one-day alcoholic beverage license for Archie McIntyre for Ride Log Farm Conservancy, July 5th, 12th, 14th, 19th, 2018, at the 1827 bar.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays, ayes have it, thank you.
Chairman, I move that we, are there any corrections to the minutes?
I would respectfully ask for another day to go over the June 15th one, because I just need another day.
Okay,
There's
so
one
we'll
at
hold
work,
off,
so-
do you want to hold off that one?
Could we
or
hold
the
off till the
others?
next meeting, is that
I think
possible?
we should
or-
hold off the 11th.
We can hold off the whole set,
Yeah.
let's hold off the whole set of them until
Okay.
we get a chance to digest them.
All right.
Okay, and then we have several donations.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept following donations to the Recreation Department Summer Concert Series from Winchester Rotary Club, $750, and from the Winchester Cooperative Bank, also $750.
Second.
We have second, any discussion?
Wanna thank
Paul.
Bob.
Yeah, well, we give him credit. He's, you know.
I'll take credit for the Rotary Club, sure.
Would you like to speak to the donation?
No, that's quite all right. We're always happy to support any of the organizations.
Excellent. We'll be down there listening.
Most of the money we raise does come back to the local community.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your generosity.
Thank you for everybody who plays golf at our golf outing, or attends our pancake breakfast, or any of our other fundraisers that we do.
Okay. So I think we've had a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, anytime we have an acceptance of donations in the future, and I'd be happy to remind, but could we also say with appreciation or some sort of acknowledgement that the board appreciates the donation in the motion?
My earlier comments about Mrs. Mon, she is the one who constantly, she will catch me tomorrow morning and say, here's the letter of appreciation, you need to sign it and get it out. So she is our most organized person in getting that stuff done.
Mr. Chairman,
So-
I'd like to thank Selectwoman Welch for that, and I'd like to amend my motion to add many thanks to the donors, to the Rotary, to the,
With profound thanks.
yes, as well as to the Winchester Cooperative Bank and
you'll get a letter too.
and the Winchester Cooperative Bank and the Rotary Club for their generous donations.
Do we have a second to the amendment?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
Unless you would like to meet during the 4th of July week, I would suggest that if you have agenda items that you would like to put on the meeting for the 9th, or ideas, I've been talking with Diab about the agenda for the 10th, but if you have issues or items or topics you'd like to bring up on the 9th, would you email them to Richard or me so that we can collect them? And I will call you at your beach houses.
And just for the record, since July 4th is on a Wednesday, that would presumably be prior to Tuesday the 3rd?
Yeah, we hope, so we have to post fairly early. If there's no other business before the board, I would ask a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Oh, good. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.